Yeah, g'day everyone. We've just completed our second trip across the Simpson Desert. We did the first one back not long after 2000, and having just completed this one, we're getting a few questions on how we did it and what we did to set our vehicles up, and as well as that, how we did on fuel mileage and so on. So a bit of a short video this one, just to let you know who can do it and what you need to do to prepare to have a successful crossing like we've achieved on our last two crossings. In the video, we'll go through the steps that we did to plan and achieve what we've done. And you got to do things like who can do a crossing. So you want to select the people. It's all purely on a group situation, this one, and not a solo crossing. So I can't give you any reference regarding preparation for doing it solo, because obviously that's a lot more involved than what it was with our group crossing that we did on both occasions. So all the information in this video relates to what we did, and it's not necessarily what everyone else should do. You need to get together with your group and plan a schedule, and that way you know where you're going to be and when you're going to get home. You need to have a good reliable vehicle, so you need good vehicle preparation. Now, depending on how long you plan on doing the trip for, obviously you've got to prepare enough food and water to see that time out. What do you think you're going to expect to see once you do a crossing and during that period that you're out in the middle of the desert? So know what you want to look for, and then you'll know what to expect. It's a long way out there and a long way from help should anything go wrong, so safety must be at the foremost of what you do. Towards the end of the video, I'll do a bit of a review on what the costs were to achieve what we did. To do a crossing like this, you need to be able to record your memories, and I'll show you how we recorded our memories on the last crossing that we've just finished. So they're the steps that we followed to prepare and achieve our crossing. So let's get into it, and we'll explain each of those steps in a little bit more detail as we go through the video. I'm Mick, and this is Sally. Together we've been caravanning Australia since the 1980s, and more recently we started to put the videos together just to show you some of what we see out there. There's a lot to see in Australia, and we hope you enjoy what we have here to show you. You can follow us on our trips via the following social media platforms. If you like the following video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So the first thing that you need to consider, who can do a crossing? And really, in reality, anyone that's sensible and is not stupid can go out there and achieve the crossing quite safely. As long as you've got a good, reliable four-wheel drive, anyone can do it, and I really mean anyone. And just as an example, when we did our first crossing, we got up to the Ajibakna Bridge on our way up, and at that point in time we found out that one of the vehicles had lost four-wheel drive, and we hadn't even reached the desert at that stage. And with the help of the friends that we went with, we managed to get him through the Simpson only in two-wheel drive. It was pretty hard going for him, but he achieved it. So like we say, with a good, capable four-wheel drive, anyone can do it. In saying that anyone can do it, I guess there's always exceptions to any rule, and that would be health issues. So if anyone that wants to do this has got some major health issues, and they could be various, it could be anything, they're the sort of people that really, it's a long way out there, it's a long way to get help, and help's not going to turn up in 5 minutes. So anyone with health issues, they're the sort of people that shouldn't do it at all. The advantage of going in a group, and that is the group can bounce off of each other, and that can be with ideas on what you want to do and where you want to go whilst you're out there, how long you want to stay in certain spots, and more importantly, if there's a breakdown or someone needs help, there's others there to help them to get out of the situation that they're in. The other advantage that we found with a group is at the end of the day you can sit around that campfire, discuss what you did during that day, all the events that were good and all, maybe even all the events that were bad if that was the case, but a group discussion sitting around a fire out in the middle of the desert, that's a wonderful experience. Step 2 that we did for ours, we planned a schedule, and by a schedule what I mean there is obviously you need to know when you're going to start the group, the trip, because obviously it's got to suit everyone in the group, but more importantly you need to know how long you're going to spend out in the desert and what your return date is. You know, has anyone got an expected return date when they want to get back by? And hopefully not, because then that allows you more flexibility out there. But on our second occasion we did have 2 people in our group and they had particular dates that they had to come back by, and that was fine because we allowed enough time for that. And by having that schedule you can space all your days out and have some idea where you're going to be on what particular day. Your schedule needs to be flexible, so if you come to an area where you want to stay in a particular spot for perhaps a little bit longer, you've got those days up your sleeve that you can move those days within your schedule and enjoy the time where you want to be. Once you've got your schedule formalised and you've got a rough idea where you're going to be on what day, you then need to share that with some reliable friends that you've got back home somewhere that can know where you're going to be. And if you don't turn up to a particular rendezvous where you may have said, look, we're going to be wherever at a particular time, Ferny Bore or somewhere like that, and you were going to somehow make contact with them just to let them know that everything's going okay and no one's injured or broken down or something drastic hasn't gone wrong, they've also got a copy of that schedule so they know when to expect that phone call or contact or whatever you may have arranged. In your schedule when you plan it, obviously where you're going to be on any particular day or what you're going to achieve on that day is also going to depend on the travel speed that you do. So as a group discussion you can sit down and work out what sort of speed you want, because some people may drive a little bit quicker than others on the dirt, and by having that schedule that's achievable you're not going to go like the clappers to try and get where you need to go that night to maintain your schedule. One thing that we did like with having a schedule is we knew where we were going to be, or hopefully going to be that night, as long as everything went to plan. And we planned that schedule to allow us to get to a campsite somewhere late in the afternoon, preferably no later than 4 p.m. That gave us enough time each day to set up camp and get the fire going if we wanted a fire, and also time to sit down and relax before we started cooking meals that evening. It just makes the day so much easier and so much enjoyable. The next thing that we need to consider is vehicle preparation. Now some people might think that, oh, you know, I can't go and do a Simpson Desert Crossing because of the isolation out there purely because my vehicle's 20 years old. Well, in reality that doesn't matter. If you've got a well-maintained vehicle and something that's reliable, that can quite easily do the distance without any issues. Because let's be honest, even though your car or your four-wheel drive might only be 12 months old, you might think that okay, it's 12 months old and it's not going to break down and I'm going to get through this desert crossing without an issue. Well, you've got to ask yourself, why is there warranty on a vehicle? So that warranty's there because it may break down. So for that reason alone you've got to think, well, my vehicle hasn't got warranty, his might break down, so he's got that warranty to cover it. But so you know, if that vehicle does break down, it can be any age, whether it be a 12-month-old vehicle or a 20-year-old vehicle. So maintenance and reliability is the key out there, because it's a long way to get help. Now there's one thing that we didn't know really how far to go. I thought maybe a set of water hoses, get them changed, because our Colorado had done 90,000 kilometres or thereabouts by the time we'd left. And you know, what do? You can't take everything. You'd need a trailer if you're going to take every spare part that you wanted. So I was inquiring about having all the water hoses changed, and I was actually advised against that, purely because of the reason with the modern motor car. They reckon you'd probably inherit more problems than what I would save. So then that left me pondering, well, what do I take? So not replacing the water hoses, I took a top and bottom radiator hoses, because they're some of the main ones that'll split. And then there's so many little subsidiary hoses that you've got to ask yourself, well, how am I going to have the right one? So what I did in this instance, I got a metre of 16mm heater hose and a metre of 19mm heater hose and the associated clamps to go with it. And I was hoping on the the chance that I did blow a hose, that I could make up my own hose from either of these two lengths of heater hoses that I was carrying on board with me at the time that we were doing our crossing. Right, so we've got all the hoses and we seem to think we're going to be able to repair what we do lose, but what do we do if we blow a hose and lose all our coolant and the engine temperature gauge and warning system hasn't got time to keep up with what's happening? So, you know, we finish up cooking an engine before we know what's happened. So in this case, what I had fitted previously was a coolant loss alarm, and that will tell me as soon as the coolant is at a certain level, and if I was to blow a hose and lose water instantly before any damage was done, that alarm would be on and alert me that I've lost all my coolant, and hopefully that would save a motor. Should that water loss have occurred, then I could repair whatever broke or blew, put another replacement hose or make up a hose with my lengths of hoses that I've got, and then we'd be on our way without too much damage being done. Fuel's always a concern when going into isolated areas, and if you're early in the season and there hasn't been much water movement in the storage areas that you're going to be purchasing your fuel from, then maybe a secondary fuel filter might be a good idea. I've always had one on the Colorado, so that wasn't something that we had to consider. I changed the filter on it before we left, so at least I had a new filter. And the old one wasn't that very old, I hadn't done very much work, so I actually took the old one with me as a spare, so should we block up that new filter, which was going to be very unlikely, at least I had something that I could work with. On the secondary filter that I've got, I've also got a water trap at the bottom of it, and that has got an alarm that alerts me should there be water in the fuel. So on the rare occasion that I might pick up water, at least I'll have some sort of warning before it gets into the fuel system in the engine. We had all-terrain tyres on our vehicle that we took across, and I think on one vehicle there may have even been a highway terrain tyres fitted, and there was no issues with that one, but all-terrains are the way to go if you've got them on your vehicle, because you will need to deflate your tyres and run them at much lower pressures, and the all-terrain tyre will handle that situation a lot better than what any other one will. Lots of tyres out there, lots of styles of tyres, so as long as you've got one that will put up with being deflated and run semi-flat, then you'll have no problems at all. We had 5 vehicles in this convoy that went across this time, and no one got a flat tyre at all. And on our first crossing some years ago that we did, out of the 4 vehicles in that convoy, only one vehicle had one flat tyre. So flat tyres, if you've got good tyres at the time, you're not going to have any issues at all. The vehicle that you're travelling in is required to have a UHF radio, and there is a nominated channel that you must work on whilst travelling through the desert, and all that information is on your Desert Parks Pass. Recovery gear, well, you probably never have too much out there because it's a long way from help to get anyone to seriously pull you out should you get stuck, and more so if you are doing a solo trip. But in this occasion, as a group crossing, we had max tracks and snatch straps, and even one of the vehicles had a winch, but a winch is not always for me anyway, and I'm only a novice four-wheel driver, but a lot of hard work using a winch in the sand because you've got to bury your spare wheel to get an anchor point. Not too many trees out there that you can tie yourself up to on a sand hill to winch off of. Of course, in a group situation you can winch off of another vehicle, but not really necessary with the type of crossing that is out there with the sand hills. So a snatch strap and some max tracks or recovery treads of some kind would be the way to go. One very most important thing that you need to be aware of is how much fuel your vehicle is going to use when it's working in a situation where it's travelling through sand for a long time. Mount Dare is the last fueling point between Mount Dare and Birdsville, so the Simpson Desert or the sand hills, that's all in between that area, so you need to work out how much fuel you're going to take. Now, we had a long-range fuel tank in our Colorado, so we had 145 litres, I think it is. It's 140 something litres in the fuel tank, and we left Mount Dare and we did our crossing and only used 110 litres. Now, even though I was pretty confident we were going to get through on that fuel tank full, I did take 20 litres spare, and that was on the off chance that should something happen to the fuel tank in the vehicle, at least I had some fuel that would allow me to move somewhere. Obviously it wouldn't do a full desert crossing should it happen pretty early in the piece where I lose the fuel, but at least I did have some fuel that I could get the vehicle movable. One other thing that should really be considered is vehicle recovery should something drastic happen to your vehicle and for some reason it has to be recovered by an outside business. If you're broken down in the middle of the desert and someone's got to come out, for example, say from Birdsville, it could be a long way for them to come, and the recovery cost of that vehicle to get it back to where it can be repaired can run into the thousands of dollars. So you need to be aware of that and know that should something unforeseen happen, that you're going to be able to cover that cost. One of the simplest and easiest things for the whole trip is where you're going to store the stuff in your vehicle, where you're going to put your food, your water. What you need to work out is what you're going to use least of and put that so it's further away from being easily got to. The stuff that you're using every day and quite often each day, you need to have that as your first point of access so you're not pulling out a heap of stored material just to get to something simple. It makes life so much easier when you're travelling. Food and water, how much are you going to need? Well, that's going to depend on how many days you're going to go for, and if you're going to think you're going to do it in 5 days, well, we did our first crossing, we were 3 nights in the desert, and that's what we actually expected to be in this next crossing that we've just completed. And in fact, we were 5 nights in the desert and not 3 like we were on the first one. Our second desert crossing actually travelled in the same route that we went on the first one, so why it took 5 and not 3, a lot of that was due to road conditions. There was a lot of undulating roads up and down and very slow going, but the sand hills, they were very good. We barely got bogged at all, and that wasn't the reason that it took that extra 2 nights. So until you get out there and do that crossing, you don't really know how long it's going to be. So you need to work out your food. Now what we did, I'm not real sure now, I think we took 4 10 litres of water, like casks, and as well as that we had a 20 litre water jerry can and a 10 litre water jerry can, so we had a spare 30 litres besides our 40, giving us 70 litres all up. And our jerry cans we use for washing, whilst the cask we use those for drinking. Now our intended period on the calendar that we were allowed to do this last desert crossing, that was actually 14 days, and that 70 litres was to last us 14 days. Now there are water points along the way, Udnadatta Roadhouse you can buy casks of water, Dalhousie you can buy casks of water. So if you're not sure how much water you're going to need, depends on what direction you're coming from, of course. By the time you get up to those locations, you'll have some idea of what your water consumption is per day, and you can replenish there as needed. In saying that, don't rely on that. Use that as a backup, because you may get to some of these locations and for whatever reason they may be sold out of these water casks. With our food, we carried 2 fridges on board. We had a 40 litre Engel fridge, and we worked that one as a fridge, and then we had a slightly smaller Engel and we ran that one as a freezer. So the food that we had on board that required refrigeration of some kind was oodles. We had heaps and heaps, and we knew that we had heaps and heaps, and we actually probably come back with 1/3 of the amount of food that we took in the first place. And of course, with our refrigerated food and frozen foods, we had dry foods and biscuits, etc., that we could use, and we consumed some of that as well as what was in the fridge. And what you need to be mindful of in a group situation, if someone's got these fridges running, and unfortunately should something happen to one of those fridges and it fails and for some reason you no longer got that fridge to use, there's others within your group that you can transfer your remaining food over, and heaven forbid you're not going to have a failure early in the piece, but you never know. So by the time that a situation arises, there's always someone else that you can transfer your food over to, because of course their fridge is going to have less in it than what there was when they left home. What are you going to expect to see when you get out there? Well, you're going to expect to see lots of sand hills, and lots of happy smiling faces around that campfire of an evening when you're sitting down discussing what you've seen and what you experienced during the day. Be prepared for some warm days, and you might think that if you're coming from the southern parts of Australia that it's cold at this time of the year. You get up into the middle of Australia in the desert and you're going to have some warm days, and following that you're going to have some very cold nights. On the 14 days that we were away on this trip, in the desert was the coldest of the cold nights, and I can recall on 3 occasions in the morning there was three very cold mornings where it was cold on the hands and you just had to get that fire going to get a bit of warmth back into your hands. So cold at night, warm to hot during the day. If you haven't been there before, expect to see some beautiful sunrises and some very pretty sunsets. It's a great place out in the desert to see all those lovely things that nature provides free of cost. Expect some minor breakdowns because they're part of life, and unfortunately when you put a vehicle through the torture that you're going to put it through, or even to rephrase that, what you're possibly going to put it through if the situation is pretty bad with the roads out there, expect some minor breakdowns. Hopefully you're not going to get a major, but you should be prepared for those minor things that may rattle loose, fall off, or just can inconvenience the vehicle to keep going. Travel safety. Now, a number of times during this video you'll probably recall or hear me mention that it's a long way from nowhere. Believe me, it is, and if you've got to go from A to B in the event of an emergency, you're not going to do that in a few hours. You might be 1 or 2 days to get back to somewhere where you can get help, and that help might then take you onto somewhere where you can be rescued. Who knows? It's anything can happen out there. So in the event of snake bites, we haven't seen one snake on the 2 trips that we've done through the desert, but they're out there. You need to be prepared, so have a suitable first aid kit and a snake bite kit on board with you at all times, and that's for your own peace of mind. The other thing that may happen out there, very hard to do I guess in the situations in the sand hills, but if you've got a vehicle that tips over for some reason, then you need to be prepared to offer as much medical aid as what you can to assist those people that are involved in that rollover. And by letting people know where you're going to be at a particular time, that also creates a bit of a safety net for you too, because if you don't turn up to that location and make that promised contact that you indicated to people that you would make, then obviously that's going to ring some alarm bells back home, and there may be people out there looking for you. When we did our first crossing, one person in the group had a satellite phone, and that's very good. That's quite common out there, and we actually had a satellite phone that we were going to take on this trip, and in the end we didn't. And you might say, well, why'd you have one and not take it? But we had Starlink with us, and by taking Starlink we not only had internet coverage that we could get any reports that we wanted to get, but we also had contact with home. And in our group meeting that we had before we left on the trip, we decided that we would always try and have Starlink coverage with the internet, which of course gave us phone calls, either incoming or outgoing, somewhere around the 6 p.m. each night, and that was going to be between 6 p.m. and 6:30. So if we needed to ring anyone, of course we could set Starlink up any time during the day, but if there was something that was happening with any of the group with their private lives home, where someone home wanted to contact them, they then knew that they could ring and hopefully get through somewhere between 6 p.m. to 6:30 each evening, and that worked out quite well for us. The other thing with Starlink, giving us the phone coverage that we needed, should we have needed emergency medical assistance, we could do video calls, and the person on the other end that was offering the assistance medically could actually see what the situation was and see that in live time, and we thought that was a great benefit. There are other safety things that you can take, EPIRBs and any sort of personal locating beacon or distress beacons. There's a lot of things out there, so you need to have something. You cannot go out there and not have some way of alerting others that something is actually wrong. So always think that safety and work out what you are going to take to suit what you need. In review on our trip, we allowed the 14 days or 14 nights to do the trip, and we believed that that was going to be quite comfortable, and it was in the end. We had, I think it was 2 spare nights that allowed us to camp in the Flinders Ranges on our way home, in fact, and that made up for the 14 nights. We could have come home 2 nights earlier and had 12 nights, but we were enjoying the time away, and we made the most of those, or that expected return date that gave us those 2 nights in the Flinders. As I mentioned before, for anyone that missed out on it, there was 110 litres for us to cross the area from Mount Dare through to Birdsville, and that in this case included the Air Creek bypass, because we actually went around on the bypass this year with Air Creek being flooded and closed off. So that detour did put a few extra kilometres onto the trip. Offhand I don't know how many that was, but it was over an hour to go up to Air Creek bypass and then another hour to come down, so you can work it out for yourself what that might be. But 110 litres for us. Now, we had a variety of vehicles, but I haven't got the figures for the other vehicles, so I can't tell you what the Land Cruiser used, or the Mazda, or the Mitsubishi, or the Isuzu, or whatever it might have been. But our particular vehicle, 110, and that can be seen on the sheet that's displayed on the screen on this video. Be prepared some way or another to record your memories during your trip, because you never know. It could be your one and only trip that you do across the desert. This was our second, and we may even do a third, who knows. But should you only ever do that one crossing, it's great to be able to look back on those photos or videos or whatever you do and just memorise on the great time that you had out there. There's lots of ways that you can capture those memories. You've got your phone. Now, we've all got phones, and you might think, oh, who's going to have them turned on out in the middle of the desert? But always have it turned on, or always have a camera ready, because when that situation arises, you can never go back and recreate it, because it might be a once only situation, and have something ready so you can capture the moment. Now, if like me, you carry a drone and you like to use the drone to capture those good moments, you need to be aware of where you can use it. And the Simpson Desert itself is in a national park and within South Australia. And whilst you're in South Australia, you're unable to fly drones in a national park unless you've got a commercial licence or permit that you do professionally. And for most of us, we don't. So you need to be aware you can't use your drone whilst in the Simpson National Park. As you're venturing into the Simpson Desert, you've got to come from somewhere. So you're going to travel to the desert from your home. And you may even do a loop round trip like we did on this occasion. And on any part of that trip, you need to know whether filming or even photography is permitted. A lot of it is on Aboriginal land, and you need to know what the filming and photography restrictions are should you come across that type of country and area during your travel either to or from the Simpson. If you like the video that you just watched, give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of our videos, click on the subscribe button. And once you've done that, change the bell notification to all. That way, every time that we do uploads to our YouTube channel, you'll be notified.